Hello and welcome to another exciting e-rev cast covering Total War World in Conflict. Tonight, as always, we have the 51 parachute regiment for the Russians, and we have the 186 infantry for NATO/American side. Tonight's map, I'll hand it over to Kami to give you a rundown on that. But right now we have an upcoming event this Sunday, November 11th, a special match between the top Total War players going up against the massive development team. We're going to be hosting that here at e-rev. And let me just go ahead and give you some times for that. Times will be, as you know, the date's Sunday, November 11th, 1 p.m. Eastern. It'll be a 3-round match. Playing three maps, Xmas, Riviera, and Riverbed, each running 20 minutes. For the massive team, you'll have Soundboy, Mur, Tarm, Conflux, and Hello Kitty. And for Total War, Airborne, Mav, Big Cracker, Rescue, and Trekker. So right now, I'll just hand it over to Kami, and you give us a rundown of the map.
Well, tonight, obviously, we've got Riviera, and it's a large map for those of you who play World in Conflict. It's got 6 different points. There are no 3 circle points at all, so it's all 2 circles. For those of you who play this, you know that the West Town as well as the Mansion are going to be the big battles for tonight. Unlike other Total War maps, though, we're not going to have a 6-on-6. Instead, it's going to be a 3-on-3. So it's going to be a little interesting, as each team is going to have to challenge themselves to spreading themselves out while at the same time pushing hard as much as possible. I'm not expecting to see too many air units since we're going 3v3, but it'll be quite interesting. And the players for tonight are going to be Raid, Rescue, and Airborne for the NATO side, with Plexity, Horton, and Pie Spy for the USSR.
Alright, we're just waiting for players to ready up now so we can get this match underway. I'm not sure if we're going to be switching maps, but I think we're going to stay on this map for 3 rounds. And taking a look just around the map, it just looks absolutely gorgeous. So everyone's readying up right now, and we're about to go live. I remember this is 3v3, so it will be a bit different, a little bit of a change of pace. It'll be odd to see what unit combinations they come up with, Kami, to deal with this map.
Well, I'm guessing it's probably going to be lighter units since it is a 3v3 and there's such large open space. Of course, I could be wrong. Definitely 1 or 2 heavy tanks in a certain area can definitely make the difference as to taking a point.
Alright, guys, I want you all, if you're tuned in, get your friends to watch the cast, and please go to www.e-rev.tv and register for our forums. And if you have IRC, go ahead and hop on to pound e-rev. Just gonna go ahead and go back into spectate mode and start this match. Alright, just taking a look at looks like, you see what players are running what classes yet, Kami?
Well, it looks like for the NATO side, for the most part, it's mostly just ground units from what I saw just before I switched to spectate. Not exactly sure what the Russians are going to bring up.
Alright, well, we are live right now, so just wait a few seconds for the cargo planes to come in and drop off the units, and we can get this underway. It'll be interesting to see, again, the type of units that both teams employ. Taking a look at the NATO side, we're just about to get a glimpse of the units they're going to have. And there we go. Looks like we have Raid running around with a lot of transport trucks, troop transports, and a few heavy anti-air vehicles. Rescue's going armor. He has 2 medium tanks, 2 heavies, and Airborne's also going armor with 2 heavies and 2 mediums. So not a lot of air cover. Looks like the NATO team is going more to get the points as quickly as possible than to really cover anything. And there you go. Horton is he's gone air with 4 medium helicopters, and he's just destroying most of Raid's transport trucks, but not before they manage to capture, not sure what point that is, not before they capture, yeah, it was West Town.
We've taken the farm.
Yeah, definitely. Looks like the Americans have set up a large force over at the village and at the mansion. NATO definitely has a huge advantage right now. The ticker is going far to their side, but the Russians have all their units gathered in one single spot. They're adjusting right now. They're hitting the enemy NATO AA, and they're going to be pushing right for the center. Probably going to grab the church as well as the west town. Right now you have Horton, who's clearing the positions just as we speak, and has just cleaned out the last of the enemies in the village, and they're going to try and move in most likely.
Well, it looks like the Russians went for the more traditional approach. They didn't go with numbers units. They just went as if they're playing 6v6, and they're paying for it right now. They need to parachute some infantry in as fast as possible and reclaim some of these positions. The bleed is heavy in NATO's favor as the battle's going down in the mansion. Rescue retreating two of his medium tanks, and Pie Spy trying to take down some of his fortifications so he can decamp this location. But it looks like Plexity is also running support. He has 2 repairs, 3 repairs, and 3 AAs. I believe someone just called in some heavy AA or heavy helicopters, and that was Horton, to bring them over towards the west town. I think he's going to try and take out a few of those heavy anti-air vehicles. Actually, he's turning his attention towards the man.
Yeah, definitely. This is definitely unexpected from the Russian team. I expected them to come out here with a lot of lighter units, and they're definitely, like you said, they're paying for it right now. They've got, they've got this huge bleed on them right now. You can barely see the Soviet flag, and they're trying to push hard, but they're still using AA units despite the fact they haven't seen any NATO air units at all.
I think they're taking the better safe than sorry approach. It's not that exciting with the 3v3. With COD4's release to the public tonight, a lot of attention's been pointed towards that game. But we still have a battle going on here, and it looks like the NATO forces have pushed a lot of reinforcements towards the mansion. They've got most of their points fully fortified, so I think this round will go to the NATO side. The Russians will have to learn from their mistake and hopefully try a different approach this next coming round, because there's no way they can stop the bleed at this stage. All the points are fully fortified. All they can do right now is just get points and call in some TA.
Yeah, for the most part. They need to come in here with light units. For all of you who are definitely experienced, you got to come in with lighter units. You all know the story. It's just surprising that such an experienced team wouldn't do that.
Well, there you go. Heavy artillery barrage called in by Plexity. Caused a lot of damage. Not that many kills, but most of the units caught inside there have been heavily damaged. I'm not sure how many called in. Maybe 2 or 3 in that general location.
Yeah, that's definitely a lot of heavy artillery, and it's definitely going to damage those tanks and give the NATO the advantage here at the very end of the match.
Just looking, they only have I think they only have 1 point. That's just fire base. NATO has farm, windmill, mansion, west town, and church.
Yeah, definitely. And under 5 minutes, it's obvious that the Soviets just got dominated right now. Basically, NATO team with airborne leading 553, raid at 321, rescue at 242, and then Plexity at 295, Pie Spy 246, and Horton leading out with 84.
Luckily, one of the Russians managed to get on the top 3 players, but hopefully they take a page from the NATO team, and one of them runs transport trucks, goes infantry, just spams those transport trucks, and gets as many points as possible. I think a tactic like that might do wonders for the Russian team this upcoming round.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, we've got 2 more rounds if the Russians can win one more time. They definitely need to come back from this right now.
I think we're playing Xmas as the next map, so we're not playing 3 rounds of Riviera. We're going to go ahead and play Xmas. Last time we saw that we were on this map was a great battle, resulted in the USA losing, unfortunately, but it was a good battle all around. So hopefully we can see the same thing this time around.
Well, definitely. Xmas is a lot more enclosed than Riviera, so obviously the heavier units are going to be much more useful in a 3v3. But still, the Russians need to come in with some light units here so they can make up the difference.
Yeah, just going to go ahead and ready up right now and get this underway as quickly as possible. Waiting on a few players, raid, rescue, airborne to ready up, and everything can get underway. Remember, guys, if you're online and you're watching the stream, go ahead and get your friends to tune in. e-rev.tv, go to forums, register, post, build up our community level. And if you're on IRC, pound e-rev, you can go ahead and send me shout-outs if you have any. I am e-rev, just add water. If you can find me, I think I might be so I might be a little bit further down the list. Just a question, Kami, are they starting out with more points to call in more units since it's only a 3v3, or are they just starting with the standard amount of points?
Well, it looks like they're just going with the standard, which means that for the most part, you know, having lighter units is going to be a bigger advantage rather than having heavier units.
Still just waiting on a few players. It's all up to airborne right now. They might be trying to get a few more players from either one of these teams to hop on and bolster the numbers. Remember, guys, we have a big massive versus Total War event coming up this Sunday, so you want to definitely tune into that. Remember, it's not an evening cast, it's in the daytime, 1 p.m. Eastern, so mid-afternoon, and it should be a good one. We're going to hopefully have the broadcast tools 100% ready for the match, so it'll be great to see them in action. Alright, wait, just countdown's going down, 10 seconds until we start. Not sure what the roles either team's going to take, but USSR definitely has to mix something up. Lighter units for them. I think the USA knows what to do. Just 1 or 2 AA units just in case, but most of the time troop transports and light tanks will win the day for this.
Yeah, for the most part, for the most part on this kind of 3v3 stuff, you can go mostly with just tanks and infantry. In fact, infantry on the smaller personnel maps are definitely much more useful.
Well, here we go. Looks like Airborne's gone armor, 2 heavy, 2 medium tanks. Rescue's gone 3 heavy tanks right off the bat. And over near the farm we have Raid, and I believe he's gone support again. And looks like he has 2 heavy AA vehicles and 3 troop transport. So right now, Russians have the drive-in, Americans have the farm and the high school, and looks like no one's really heading towards the east suburb, but everyone's turning their attention towards the west suburb. So right off the bat, there's a slight bleed in favor of the US, and we have some conflict in right in the west suburb. We've got 5 heavy tanks going up against 3 Russian heavy tanks. Looks like Perplexity and Highspire going at it with a repair heavy tank combo. And then over towards the back end of the west town, we have Perplexity holding off a few AAs, but Horton also going armor. So no air units at all, it's just armor and support.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, the first team who's going to get the east suburb is going to have an advantage here. And the Airborne is obviously moving tanks as I speak. Go over to the east suburb. They're going to take that real quick. So if the Russians want to get a bleed here, they either need to get the west suburb here, as well as drop some units, most likely some light tanks, into the east suburb to hold it.
Well, I think they're going to get the west suburb right now. They're doing quite a number on these American heavy tanks. They just need to move one of them off these points and they can take a hold, but I think Airborne might get the east suburb and the Americans are going to get another bleed. Now their bleed's a bit more significant, but the Russians will get west suburb eventually. They just need to battle out these last remaining American tanks. There we go. Rescue called in a tank buster. Not sure if he got any kills off that. I think it was a little bit too far to the right.
Well, the Americans are still rushing a lot of light troop transports into the west suburb. They're trying to decap it, but obviously with the tank there's no way they're going to be able to get it. The Americans are still pushing tanks into the center as well from rescue, but you know what the Russians need to do is they need to gather their TA, get some light tanks and drop them over where Airborne is on the east suburb and get that point. Because right now the Americans are just delaying them.
Well, looking over at the drive-in, looks like Ray took his troop transports and just quickly decapped that. So now the Americans have a significant lead on the Russians. The Russians finally have west suburb, but they just lost the drive-in. They're sending heavy tanks to recap it. They're going to be able to recap it, but they need to keep units there or fortify it a little bit, because I'm pretty sure Raid's going to keep attempting those quick troop transport rushes on unguarded points, which will win the day on a map if there's no fortifications down. Airborne over at the east suburb already getting fortifications laid down. The farm has fortifications, and the Russians are just focusing on fortifying the west suburb.
Yeah, definitely. That's going to be the big emphasis right now. They want to get fortifications up. They want to make sure that the light transport vehicles are not being used as effectively as they are. Even light tanks are going to be unuseful once you get a full fortification and an AT for it. It looks like the Russians are bringing 2 heavy tanks from Horton over to the east suburbs right now. They're probably going to try and take that, but I doubt just 2 heavy tanks are going to be able to take the east suburbs without at least some tactical aid.
Well, at this stage, again, do you think either team has much tactical aid built up, or do you think it's just a little bit of just not much at all?
Well, it doesn't take too much tactical aid to decap a point. It really only takes, a couple airstrike points, which costs, 20 TA points. If you can do that, you can annihilate at least the enemy's AT fortification as well as the units on the circle.
Well, speaking of that, PieSpy did just that with the cluster bomb strike, and now he's finishing off some troop transports and one heavy AA vehicle, and I think he's going to be able to decap the farm and break the American bleed, and hopefully build up a Russian bleed as he takes down the last resistance over at the farm with 2 heavy tanks. And there we go. Just needs to take out 1 machine gun fortification. The Americans, looks like there's a battle ensuing over at the east suburb, but there's a lot of American tanks over there right now from Airborne. He has 3 mediums, 2 heavies. He's going up against 2 Russian heavies, 2 Russian mediums, and a repair tank. So I think the Russians may have the advantage on there if Complexity uses this repair tank properly.
Well, actually, I believe that's 2 light tanks, which should give the Americans the advantage. However, there is a repair tank, just like you said, and if the Americans try and concentrate their fire on 1 unit, that repair tank just has to repair that single unit.
The repair tank's special ability, it makes it quite difficult being able to... Oh, and there we go! Ray calling in a heavy airstrike, just annihilating any hope by the Russians to take this east suburb. But getting back to west suburb, looks like the Americans rescues to send in a few heavy tanks. They're not doing much, and over at the farm, looks like one of the heavy tanks from PieSpy has been destroyed by 2 heavy helicopters. That's a change of pace. Looks like Raid's gone air for his team, so that might be an interesting mix-up for them, as the Russians now have a slight bleed on the Americans. If it keeps up at this rate with no changes, the Russians will come back and take the lead, but it's going to take a while.
Well, Horton has dropped a couple airborne units. Obviously, he's going to drop some artillery, most likely on those infantry fortifications. I don't see too many American vehicles, mostly because Airborne's pushing them into the center. I think that was a bad move, pushing all of his units out of there, because the artillery from that airborne units are just going to knock out the fortifications and eventually decap that point. Of course, over on farm as well, the point is decapped. The Americans just have to bring a couple troop transports. Raid's doing just that. But he's going to need more than just 1 to cap that position.
Well, I'm just looking back. It looks like Plexity, I'm not sure how helpful the repair tanks are going to be. He's called in a scout helicopter. That's going to be helpful on the basis that, they don't have that much TA, so every good hit really matters. But the repair tanks... I'm not sure how useful they'll be. With Airborne right now doing a number on the west suburb, he has 3 heavy tanks moving in. He's about to decap as long as he can take down this AA or AT fortification.
Well, the Russians actually do have the ticker on their side right now, although it looks like the Americans are going to be able to bring in some units to decap the west suburb. And Airborne has done just that with 3 heavy tanks running on the point, and the Russians are scrambling right now with all their units to try and knock him off that point. And just then a tank buster by Pie Spy knocks out Airborne, and the Russians are going to retake the west suburb.
Alright, they have the bleed back in their favor. Plexi just sitting back with repair tanks and his scout helicopter as Pie Spy and Horton move vehicles back into the west suburb. Drive-through undefended right now. If Raid takes advantage of that, he can go ahead and cap that, but I think he's going to sit at farm with those 2 troop transports and build it up and get some fortifications laying on there. I'm surprised the Russians haven't done the same thing for drive-through. If the Americans catch on to that, they can turn the bleed in their favor even more than it is right now.
Well, what's pretty dangerous here for the Americans is actually, because Airborne pulled all of his units out, he's waiting for his units to come back in, get some reinforcements, and Horton right now is bringing in his tanks over to the east suburbs. And if he can just knock out those fortifications real quick here, he'll be able to take the east suburb before Airborne can bring in some more units.
Airborne's bringing in some amphibious transports to the area, trying to dislodge Horton's airborne infantry. Airborne infantry, a really tricky unit to deal with. They can hide in the forest, and their direct artillery strike is amazing. It's just like getting a free precision strike every, the cooldown rate is every 60 seconds or so, and he calls in another 2 sections of airborne infantry, and he follows that up by bringing up 2 medium tanks, which will quickly disable those amphibious transports, and he'll be able to decap this point. Airborne just smoking out his tanks, trying to hold the point for as long as possible, and there you go. Horton decaps it, and the bleed goes back to the Russians' hand.
Well, with 10 minutes in here, it's still pretty much anyone's game, even though the Americans do have the advantage. And just then, the Russians dropped a huge cluster bomb on Airborne, and they're going to take the east suburb. However, they still have to deal with 2 airborne units from Raid, who most likely will be using that artillery strike that's a freebie to destroy those tanks. And yes, I believe it is a 60-second cooldown on the artillery.
I thought those were Horton's airborne squad, so I was sure he's capping them, but they're actually Raids, and he did just that as you said it. He has 1 airborne squad on the cap, but the medium tank with its special ability is able to take down infantry relatively easily, but looks like Raid's running them out of the point and just has them garrisoned in the house, but he created enough of a distraction to allow Airborne to bring up 3 heavy tanks, and Horton called in 3 light tanks, so that's just a big waste of TA at this stage. Not sure how he planned that out, but he called in 3 light tanks from his support TA, and they're just going to get annihilated by these heavy tanks.
Well, definitely. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the Russians decide to grab at least another air unit here, because there's just a lot of tanks. It would be a bold move if one team goes and switches to some air units. Obviously, Raid has got a couple heavy choppers from the American side, but you know, one side that can bring in a heavy chopper here can have a serious advantage, since there's no real AA on the map right now.
Raids is about to discover there is no defense at the drive-in, and I think he's going to call up his jeeps shortly now, as he has fully fortified the farm. He has his heavy attack helicopters over the drive-in, so I'm assuming he's just waiting to call up those jeeps as he swings around behind the west suburb. He's going to run into 2 heavy AA units. He needs to pull those heavy choppers out of there quickly, or he's going to lose one. Oh, and there he goes. He loses one. He manages to save one of his heavy choppers, but it's badly damaged. He still hasn't made his move on the drive-through with his troop transports. Not sure what he's waiting for, but the Americans do have the suburb as well. Airborne keeping all his tanks there. I think he's going to bide his time and build up fortifications before he moves out of that area again.
The drive-in is...
Well, the Americans have gone and dropped a couple light tanks here, obviously from Raid. As you mentioned, he had spotted that out, and since there were no Russian units in the area to even see those heavy choppers, he just clearly took that point without ease. I'm not even sure if the Russians have realized it. Now, yes, they have, and Pie Spy's bringing in a bunch of heavy tanks. Although I think he's turning around.
I'm not sure why. There's 7 minutes left on the clock. You know, the Russians can come back here. Oh, there we go. Plexity destroying those 2 light tanks with 2 cluster bomb strikes, but you know, the Americans still hold the point, and now they have a significant lead, as I believe, who is it? It's Rescue decamp on the west suburbs points, so I think that's what drew Pie Spy's attention away, and the Russians recapture it, but still the Americans have the significant lead. Raid's calling in his heavy helicopter, is just picking off the health of those heavy tanks by Pie Spy.
And Ray drops a carpet bomb right into the center, and that's pretty much going to single the end of the fortifications in the center. Most likely the Americans are going to try and push in some units here. The Russians really need to get some light units here, re-grab the drive-in, as well as push onto one of these American points. But really, each of them are a tough fight, since every single one of the points that the Americans have is guarded by a single player, plus they've got full fortifications on all 2 of the points.
Alright, well, it looks like they recaptured the drive-in west suburb. It's completely vulnerable, and now the Americans are making their move as Rescue and Airborne pushing in tanks from across the high school's bridge and the east suburbs bridge. And here comes Airborne with 5 tanks, 4 heavies, 1 medium. He's going to be able to get a lot done at this stage. He's going to be able to destroy all of Horton's defense in the area just with a few well-placed shots. And Horton, trying to save his tanks, is smoking them out. And looking over at the farm, it looks like Pie Spy is trying to decap the point, but I think his efforts would be better spent trying to defend the west suburb.
Well, clearly he needs to go and grab at least another point here for the win, but with those heavy choppers, there's no chance for Pie Spy to grab that position at all. Obviously, the Americans did a great job with the carpet bomb. They switched up by following up an attack, and Horton's dropped a carpet bomb, but still 5 minutes left. They better do something quick here if they intend to win.
Well, I think the Americans are just about to secure the west suburb. Oh, and there we go. This is going to be a quick total domination for the Americans once they touch this point. Oh, there we go. A few last-minute TAs by the Russians have somewhat saved the west suburbs. There we go. Nice call-in by those cluster bombs, completely destroying most of those American units. But as you said, those heavy helicopters are still in play, and here they come. They're doing quite a number on Horton and Plexity's unit.
Yeah, definitely. Heavy helicopters do have a play in lighter units, even though most players don't use them. But definitely, you know, pulling off those AA units is a dangerous thing, because all it takes is one smart player to pull up with heavy choppers, and he'll have a huge advantage on this map.
And there you go. The Americans have the full bleed right now, or no, well, most of it, as drive-in is still in Russian hands. And I believe this match is going to be over shortly. There's no Russians can come back unless they miraculously capture all the points. And even if they do that, I'm not sure if it's possible.
Yeah, they definitely would need some hacks from Massive if they're going to be able to come back from this.
So there you go. Looks like the Americans will walk away with this week's Tuesday Night Fight victory with a score of 2-3 overall in maps. They won the first 2 maps in a row. They won Riviera, and now they've just won Xmas. So good plays by them.
Well, definitely the Russians did come back from this, but, you know, right off the start, that first round really cost them on Riviera. If they hadn't done that, they had spread out their units and they hadn't just played like a normal 6v6, they would have had a lot better chance and at least put the first round up to about 10 minutes.
Well, that would have been a smart play by them. But I think they have the mindset of going into the match as if it was a normal 6v6 like normal. Well, we have good games from all the teams. I believe we're going to drop out now. I'm not sure if we're going to play this last map. But anyway, guys, remember this Sunday, Total War versus Massive. The best players in Total War going up against the Massive development team. So we'll have some fun with that. We have a pre-recorded interview before the match that we did with one of the developers. His name escapes me right now. So you're going to want to definitely tune in for that. Remember, it's at 1 p.m. Eastern to accommodate the fact that Massive is a European-based company.
Well, it looks like the my AS team does want to have one more round here, so hopefully the Russians can at least save a little bit of face here and grab one last round.
Well, that wouldn't be good for them. They did, not to be mean to anyone, they did get trounced, but it is a different pace with the smaller number of players. Remember, guys, go ahead and register on our forums and get the chance. e-rev.tv. I can't stress to you how important it is for people to register on the forums. You know, give us your feedback. What do you like? What do you not like? And for all you listening out there, you know, e-rev TV is hiring for World in Conflict. We're looking for broadcasters, videocasters, eventually news writers. So if you fit the bill, go ahead and go to the forums and go to the Join Us section. Present your resume, present your past experience, tell us what you can bring to the team, and we'll welcome you to the family. Right now we're just waiting on a few players to ready up, waiting on Airborne. There we go, he's ready. Just going to drop back out to sea. And in 20 seconds we'll get this underway. Give us a rundown of Riverbed, Kami.
Well, on the east side you've got Hill 81 as well as Hill 95, where there's a little bit of action. The main action is mostly going to be around North Rally Point and Power Station, as those are the two most contested points to go after. But Road also has, unusually, despite the fact it's so far away, tends to be the main factor of the map of whoever controls that point.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. Can you see what roles each player's picked as the transport planes come down for the Americans and the Russians? Guess we'll take a look. Looks like Rescue's going armor. He has 3 heavy tanks. Raid's going support. He's sending out 2 troop transports. He has 1 repair, or 3 troop transports, and then he has 2 heavy AAs, and third player Airborne is gone armor yet again as they go ahead and they're going for the capture at the North Rally Point.
Well, it looks like the Russians are going to make a hard move onto the 2 hills there as they push forward onto Hill 81, and at the same time it looks like they're going to bring in some infantry from Horton, but without some transport vehicles it's going to take some time before we can get over to the power station.
Well, Spy and Rescue are going at it right now. Plexity pulling up the rear, not sure what he's bringing to the table, probably a repair tank, as Horton has infantry moving towards the power station. So Hill 95 is in Russian hands, North Rally Point's American, and the Road will also be American right now, as Raid really exploiting those troop transports' ability and speed. He's rushed all the way across the map and taking those, and Power Station is also in American hands. The main battle right now is between Plexity, Spy, and Rescue over at Hill 81, as we have some TA being called in. I believe those are mortar strikes. We'll have to go ahead and go in.
But at the same time here, Horton is basically, even though he's infantry and it took him some time to get over here, he's wiped out one of the heavy tanks here. He just needs to annihilate some of these other heavy tanks, maybe drop in a tactical aid here from his buddies. And the Russians at the same time have secured Hill 81 to give them a little bit of control over the map. But with 2 heavy tanks there, they need to get a lot more reinforcements over to ensure that they can hold that position.
Well, you said earlier in one of the maps, infantry, if anyone picked it, would play a key role. They're slower to the fight, but with fewer units, you don't have to worry about as many threats of artillery strikes from a support player. I don't think any support player with these 2 players would be wise to pick up a heavy artillery unit, although it might save them a lot. That's also 1 unit that's taking up a lot of resources. But,
right.
Looks like most of Horton's infantry has been disabled. I think when he spawns in again, he'll focus more on anti-tank infantry than mixing up his infantry to suit all the enemies possible. And taking a look, I believe that's over at Hill 81. Rescue has a unit up there as the Russians, Plexi has pulled off the hill, and he's pulling away from it. He's in a little firefight with one of Rescue's heavy tanks, and the Americans can pull up a unit right now and capture the hill, as they have a significant lead right now. Take a look, they do have road, power station, north rally point, and they will have hill 81 if they play their cards right. But there you go, Plexi calling in a cluster bomb on Rescue, which sends units back up to the hill. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. He has one tank making his way up there. Not sure if he's going to call in anything else. And there you go, Horton pulling up anti-tank infantry as he battles a machine gun fortification.
Well, definitely. The Americans seem to be much more agile at this right now. The Russians need to start switching up a lot faster here. The Americans are still pretty light over at the road. If they could drop in some infantry, Horton switch up maybe, and then just put tanks onto the power station, they might be able to secure the road as well as continue to push onto the hill so they can get a little bit of a bleed here. But the Americans have the power station heavily defended. They've got at least the units from 2 different players holding that position. There's just no way the Russians are going to get it unless they throw every single one of their units on top of it.
I was taking a look at Hill 81. I'm surprised Raid hasn't gone behind. Oh, there he goes, going behind Rescue's tank to get more damage done by shooting from behind. But the power station has a lot of lighter units in there, so like a carpet bomb or a massive use of TA points, tactical strike will do wonders in this area. As looks like Airborne is pulling all his units, all his troop transports up to take some of these Russian points. He's assaulting Hill 95 right now with quite a few troop transports. Rescue just securing Hill 81. So the Russians really only have Hill 95 at this stage, and the bleed is huge in the Americans' favor. I don't see how the Russians can come back from this, but there still is 14 minutes and 41 seconds left on the clock.
Yeah, definitely. They do have the time. They just need to get this bleed out of there real quick. The Americans have got a lot of units. They tried to drop a fuel air bomb, which probably would have wiped out all the American units if it hadn't been for Airborne pulling all those units to try and attack that last hill that the Russians have. Of course, the Russians really do need to think about getting another point here, going for a different kind of point, because the hill, because, you know, total domination, it's pretty much over, as the Russians were unable to save face here. Obviously, their game is 6v6 and not 3v3, and maybe next time they'll remember to use some 3v3 tactics.
Well, remember guys, every Tuesday night fight, that's it for tonight. We played 3 maps, Riverbed, Riviera, Xmas. Remember this Sunday, again, I know I've been saying it a lot, but Massive vs. Total War, it's a big community event. It posts on the main section when you join, when you go up to join World in Conflict Online. You'll see it. It'll have all the information for you. So just 1 p.m. Eastern, e-rev.tv.
And don't forget this Sunday, the World in Conflict special with Massive at 1 p.m. Eastern.
Alright guys, let's just add water signing out. Thanks to Limek tonight for running video for us. Always joining us. He's been doing a fantastic job running video. Great camera placement, and just excellent all around. So remember, next Tuesday night fight. I think we're done for the next.